Good morning, everybody. Good to see you again. Um, Kate, if you want to put up the little agenda document, it'll be very brief today. And so we're just going to do like a really quick review of some main points that we covered in the session 2 weeks ago. And it's hard to believe it was 2 weeks ago already. So much has happened in 2 weeks. And then we're going to talk about the executive summary and the main components that we kind of talked about briefly in session 1. Volunteer submissions. I've got, as Stephanie mentioned, a couple of samples that we'll take a look at today. And they can be made available and sent out after the call this morning as well, so that you can take a look at them. And then we'll just talk about, how do you connect with funders in the time of COVID-19? Well, everything is just so challenging right now, and you're kind of not sure, do I reach out to funders? Do they want to talk to me? Do I submit something where I've never gone to this funder before? And things like that. So I'd like this session to be more interactive today, with everybody kind of chiming in a little bit. So don't be afraid to offer your opinions on the samples, as well as, maybe experiences you've already had with funders and talking with them, and how you're dealing with, submitting proposals, as well as, are you talking to funders about reallocating some grant money that you already received? So we will start out. Kate, if you want to start with the PowerPoint. I think we can go right into the objective slide.
Alrighty. So. And with that being said about interactions, I'm going to allow everyone to unmute themselves when they want to, but if you're not speaking, just please remember to keep yourselves on mute.
So, okay, good. Yeah, this is perfect. Just a quick review of things we talked about from session 1 and putting together your grant proposals. Your familiarity with executive summaries, we'll get into that. We'll review samples, like I said, and communicating with funders in the time of COVID-19. So kind of going back a little bit to things that we talked about in session 1, it's really important to be prepared to go to funders and to talk with them. And they don't, especially these days when we're dealing with so many challenging things and juggling so many balls, that they don't expect you to have everything perfect right now. Likely your organizations have been impacted by COVID-19. I think almost everybody could say that. And so really what funders are going to be looking for is how are you dealing with the current situation? How are your programs going? Have you had to postpone a launch? I know Levy, I've worked with Levy to do a proposal for the Friendship Bakery and Cafe, and they had to postpone the official launch this year of the cafe and apply for PPP funding, and had to shift some things around. And so it's okay to explain that, because funders are going to appreciate hearing that from you. And they're going to want to see, okay, we're managing, we're trying to anticipate what we're going to need for the rest of this year and into next year. We don't know what's going to happen. We can't see ahead, but we are doing everything that we can to prepare and adjust and still serve the people that we're here to serve. So keep in mind those things and don't be worried about, well, gee, I have to, I still have to meet the metrics that I said I would meet 8 months ago. Because, likely you're going to have to adjust things. So, okay, we'll go to the next slide, Kate. We'll talk about the executive summary a bit. Basically, what this is your essence of who you are and what you want to do. And so, like I mentioned during the first session, proposals are going to vary for each funder. The formatting will vary, the word count and things like that. But the essence of what you do is going to stay the same. So who are you? Should be incorporated in it. What do you propose to do? Connect your program and purpose with the funder priorities. If the funder covers arts programs and arts for children, and you have, your focus is on seniors, then that funder is likely not a good candidate for a proposal. And again, be realistic in what you propose to do. This is where you can talk about COVID and what has happened and how you're adjusting. Who will your program and project serve and impact? Again, don't hesitate to mention the impact of COVID-19 on your programs. Talk about who you intend to serve and why. What is the need? What will be the impact? For example, learning opportunities for children, after school opportunities for an arts program, things like that. So what impact do you plan on achieving? What's the community need? Are you doing something that is unique in the community? Or do you have something that is building on what's in the community and you're enhancing programs that are already being provided? So in the way that's unique. So you want to call those things out in your executive summary. How you will evaluate the success of the program. And here we talked last time about being realistic and being attainable in your goals. And so if it's a new program and you don't have any goals to benchmark yet, that's okay. You can talk about the need that you're seeing, the requests, the demand for the programs. And this is why you think that you're well positioned to be able to provide those programs in the community. And then start with realistic goals. So you're going to serve, you've got, say, a group of 30 kids that could really use an after-school program. And you plan on serving all 30 of those children. But you're going to need the funding to help you be able to do that. And you want to achieve that, reaching that 30 goal by the end of 2021. Anybody that you're collaborating with in the community, so other partners that you're working with. You may have other organizations that can provide auxiliary services and have a specialist come in to work with the kids on other areas. Maybe they need, in addition to art, they're looking for after-school study skills. And you need to have a tutor come in and things like that. So you're reaching out to another organization and you're partnering. So what will you need to implement? So don't forget to ask for that. So any questions at this point that anybody has? You can put it in, you can put your questions into the chat, or you can just speak up. Okay, so let's get to the first sample, and we'll start with the poorly written example. So, and full disclosure, this is a grant example that I wrote many years ago when I first started out. And full disclosure, I muddied it up just for this presentation today to make it more distinct from the one that I think is much better written. But I don't know, Kate, can this be expanded a little bit? There we go. There, great. So this is a youth project that I wrote for an organization that was looking at-risk youth and offering something after school. So the first couple of paragraphs, we're looking at our Terracotta for Youth project will operate on the concept of providing 100% customer satisfaction to at-risk youth. We know we can offer 100% customer satisfaction because our staff have all worked in nonprofit organizations before. Our programs are top quality and will be of great benefit to at-risk youth in our community. Based on what we've heard, our organization provides programs better than any other organization out there. We know we will succeed and reach our goals. So anybody want to take a stab at some things they would change around this first paragraph and things that kind of pop out at them?
It doesn't say what your organization actually does for the youth, like what actual services, what needs it's trying to address.
Exactly.
Oh, so the 100% number, is that too much? Like maybe be more realistic, say the truth?
Yep, exactly. You're both right. It's very unclear to, as far as introducing the project and what you're going to do. And you never ever want to say 100% because nobody can ever achieve 100% realistically. You want to lower your percentage that you expect to achieve. And then if you exceed that, you're in a really good position. So you might want to lower that to 85 or 90%, especially if it's a brand new program. Yeah, great points.
I feel like saying that people have worked in nonprofit before doesn't really give you the clout to say that's why you're going to offer customer satisfaction.
Exactly. And that's another problem with how this is introduced. I mean, just saying, it sort of makes me laugh now when I read through this, because just saying that you worked at other nonprofits doesn't give you any clout. It doesn't really show, the expertise of the staff. Have you worked with at-risk youth? Have you provided arts programs before? And just to say general statements like we know we will succeed and reach our goals that really means nothing either. So it's a lot of fluff and it's a lot of generalizations. So in this part, what you should be doing is you want to introduce the organization. You want to say clearly what the program you're bringing to the funder is. And you want to save your percentages and what you think you'll achieve a little bit later down in the main section of the summary. So then we kind of go on to, we plan on reaching out to schools that have a high percentage of middle schoolers and teens who are absentee and or dropouts. Based on our research, there are plenty of schools who are in need of this kind of program. The need for schools to adopt programs like this is clear. It will allow them to improve their absentee and dropout rates while keeping the teens occupied during the day. This will also provide a solid future for youth who have no other alternative to pursue a career. Anybody want to take a stab at what's wrong with that section?
I didn't like the use of plenty of schools. Like, what does that mean, plenty? Did you do any research? Do you know how many schools are there? Maybe write some numbers. Just a thought.
The other one that I saw was high percentage of middle schoolers and teens, but there's no actual percentage. So what would be a high percentage? Would it be 50%, 25%, 70%? Like what was the actual like percentage of the students who were absentee or at risk of dropping out?
Yep, great points. Saying based on our research really says nothing, right? What research? And what schools are you talking about? Are you talking about a specific school district? And saying high percentage, what does that mean? What are the absentee and dropout rates in the school district that you're going to be working in and providing this program in?
Also,
So, yeah, go ahead.
this kind of program is very vague still. Unless I missed something above, we still don't know what the program is. And even if we did, you know, I still think this kind of program is very vague.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, okay, so we're halfway through the executive summary and we're still not clear on what the project is, right? So if I was looking at this as a grant reviewer, I think I might have tossed it out already, and I'm only halfway through because it's not giving me a clear picture and it's giving all kinds of vague statements.
Can I comment on that also?
Yep.
I should have stated up at the beginning again that I'm going to comment from the funders.
I don't hear you.
I'm sorry. What I don't know if you heard, if I was on mute, I just said that I forgot to say that I was going to jump in occasionally from the funders' perspective. So what this is telling me is that this organization is not an expert. They are disorganized in the way they're thinking about the program. That that I don't have confidence in them. So, and the reason I'm presenting that is because knowing what the negative impact on the funder should help you reframe so that you're making it not be that way. I don't know. It should be educational or constructive to help you realize how to reframe something when you understand what the funder is thinking when they're reading it.
Yep, absolutely. Good perspective. Okay, so now we are halfway through. We get to the next paragraph. The need for schools to adopt programs like this is clear. It will allow them to improve their absentee and dropout rates while keeping the teens occupied during the day. This will provide a solid future for youth who have no other alternative to pursue a career. The program will be based on other models we have seen to be successful in the community, and it is our belief that your support will be a wise investment in poor neighborhoods in the city of blank. Your investment of $5,000 will be used to create opportunities for these at-risk youth to pursue creative projects, something they don't have the opportunity to do in school. So any feedback on those two paragraphs?
Same feedback. It's still extremely vague.
And also, if we're basing it on other successful models, why do we need yours?
Well,
Yep.
also, it just sounds mean. Like to speak of people as though they have no other opportunities in the world and won't succeed without you, I think is kind of a really, as a funder, I wouldn't want to read that. I want to know what you're doing to better people, not like you're the only thing in town.
Using any kind of absolutes it seeds doubt in the mind of the funder.
Still unclear as to what the creative projects would be.
Yep, you guys are all right on point. We're finally getting to some where we talk about at-risk youth pursuing creative projects, but it's still not, what are those creative projects? And it should have been mentioned much earlier. And that's a great point that Jess made about providing a solid future for youth who have no other alternative to pursue a career. So it does make it sound like we're the be all and end all with this project, and no one else can do what we do. Go ahead, Libby, if you have a question.
It's not relevant to this sentence, so it's just a question for at some point. We can talk about it later.
Okay. So, and the first sentence, the need for schools to adopt programs like this is clear. Well, how is it clear? We don't talk about any other schools or what is the need really specifically in the community. Are schools asking for programs like this? What are you hearing in your district? Have you talked with administrators and so on? Have teachers been contacting you to provide a program like this? So again, there's lots of generalizations in here, not backed up by any kind of research or data. So then we get to, if we're still reading, which I'm not sure I would be as a funder, if we're still reading this, we get to the last part. With our experience in the field of serving at-risk youth, we believe our organization will succeed, and the staff to be employed with us will have all the extensive experience and expertise to get the job done. We have an extensive network of contacts in the local community, and they have come to trust our abilities and honest approach to serving at-risk youth. We plan to start our program as soon as we can secure funding. Thank you for your support. Any feedback on that last section?
The way I usually go about things, which may be different from other organizations, is I always try to test the field before. So for example, we built out an art studio, but that was after doing art programs for many years. So then I would have data to go on, right? Over here, they're basically saying, well, if you give me the money, then I'll do it. If you don't, then I won't. So obviously, maybe the need isn't that great. I don't know. That's just how I think.
If they have an extensive network of contacts, I want to hear what some of them are.
Yep, both great points. Anything else that anyone is seeing in this that is kind of jarring?
Also, what experience do they have? How do they know they'll succeed? Again, what have their staff done to be experts? I mean, everything about this paragraph is not great.
Absolutely.
I think, though, that this paragraph could be good if in the top half of the executive summary, they actually explained it, because the paragraph summarizes what should have been explained above. So it's in a vacuum, it stinks, but had it all been clarified above, you would read that and say, yes, I see your experience, and I see the experience of your staff, and yes, you told me about your network and all of those details.
That's a great point. Anybody else?
I also think that thank you for your support is a little assuming that when they read all the way to the bottom, they've decided to support.
I would write thank you for your consideration. That would maybe be better.
Good idea. Yeah. Yeah, this paragraph, I mean, and Jess, you're absolutely right. If the beginning of this executive summary had launched into what we're going to do and specifically outlined, our background a little bit, again, not a lot of information needed, but some is needed. This could be a good introduction, but it's at the end after you've waded through all this kind of generalizing statements, and you really have not captured the funder's attention at this point. I think probably more disappointed the funder and not given a very great impression of yourself to that funder, and maybe lost that opportunity. Okay, so if no other comments on this, we will go to the one that I think is much better example of how you want to write one.
Can I just make one more comment?
Yep, go right ahead.
Stephanie's comments before also. So I would consider myself to be a very poor grant writer. And sometimes I've succeeded anyways, even though it wasn't as professional as I would like it to be, and it wasn't. And Stephanie, you've seen some of my grant requests probably, and sometimes they're not written that well, but because I'm sharing something with passion, I think that comes through. So I don't think I think I have room to improve, and I think we always want to be as professional as possible. But even if you're not, I still think you should still work at it.
I agree with that. There are a few different things. Is that you're not a you're not a poor grant writer. The other thing is, I know your organization. I know the people who run it, and I know. So I have confidence in the leadership, and that you will do what you've said you're going to do, and I know what your outcomes are. So you have an advantage with the funder in that regard. The other thing is, this shouldn't discourage you from submitting proposals, because you're right, Levy, that that it's your chances of getting funded are much better if you write a persuasive and strong proposal, but you can still get funded even if you don't. I mean, there are plenty of times where we've gotten what I would consider very weak proposals, but we would go back and ask for more information, ask for clarity. I don't know if that helps, but those are just a few thoughts.
If I could ask my question now that I wrote in the chat. So it's like you said, you knew the organization, which worked to our benefit in some cases, but I'm struggling with, during COVID, how to reach new funders, because every foundation that I would call now, the last 4 months, well, either they fund you or they don't. They're not coming to visit. They're not doing site visits. At best, you'll get a Zoom site visit, but I can't have that impression. And I'm just struggling. I don't know that I can get a new foundation during this time. I've tried it. I've not succeeded in that.
I don't know how to respond to that. Emily, maybe.
Sure. And we'll talk a bit more about this in a few minutes. Things that you can do to, get front and center. And definitely this is a hard time. So, don't be discouraged if you haven't gotten much of a response or no response, because funders are getting inundated with requests. And so grants are getting even more competitive right now. And it's even more important to keep at it and to keep doing it. And that's why I think, you have to keep thinking, okay, I'm laying the seeds of the foundation with this funder. So even if they don't, my proposal doesn't get granted right now, you're going to lay those seeds for the future, and it might be granted next year, and you could reapply next year. And so it's tough. You know, I'm certainly not going to sugarcoat how things are this year, but that doesn't mean, you know, we don't want people to stop reaching out. And we'll talk in a few minutes about maybe some creative ways that you can keep in touch with funders, um, especially new funders that you haven't been going to before.
I have a couple of other observations. The first thing I want you to know, like the process of I said this the first session, but I want to reiterate it. It's very intimidating to try to seek funding from a foundation. There's many parts of it that they're intimidating. You should know though, going in, that funders want to fund you. It's not an adversarial, you know, or I'm just waiting to be like irritated and say, forget it, I'm writing you off. They read every proposal going in saying, I want to fund this. So you should feel confident from that perspective. The other thing is, I want to underscore what Emily is saying about getting to know organizations. So there is one grant cycle that the Federation does that is outward facing to non, you know, outside of the Jewish community. And I can think of 2 organizations where they applied for funding multiple times, maybe 3 or 4 times. And through that, we got to read their proposals and got to sort of understand what it is that they did. And eventually they did get funding. It's a very good advice from Emily to keep trying, so that that is the way to build relationship, you know, in sort of a long-term way.
May I ask a question, Emily?
Mm-hmm.
I've been volunteering, and then I'm starting to work here with Project WizHope, and I've noticed they've got a very limited number of measurables. Like they'll measure how many hours in peer-to-peer connection they're creating for people who call in for counseling or coaching, or people who are in recovery services. So they'll monitor how many hours are like they're over 5,000 hours now over the last 3 years. Or they'll measure how many people have been in recovery housing services. Now, I feel like I need to get in there and figure out what are the other measurables, and you know, how do they evaluate success? Sometimes people overdose, and so I have to write the letters to thank people for their donations in memorial. But some people have been addicts for a long time, and then, you know, they're really caught in a cycle, and they've been in the program, but they've left the program, and then, you know, so it's got life and death consequences, this whole thing. But you know, how do you get in and find the other measurables that they haven't put out there yet?
So you're wondering from the funder perspective, if
well, I'm writing the proposals, and I'm like, I need more measurables in here. Yeah.
Okay. My default is to stick with what the funder is asking for. And, you know, you can also say in your proposal that we also capture impact through the following measures. And you can make it a little more descriptive rather than giving them a lot of data.
Okay.
So for example, if you know that number of overdoses in 1 year is an important measure for what you're doing.
Like the state of Wisconsin, there is data related to that.
Right. And so you can make that descriptive and say, we also capture measurements in the following areas. We're happy to provide that information if that would be, you know, if you need it. And if we need, this is how we help track our program and our effectiveness.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're capturing other things that they're not quite looking for or asking for, just let them know about that.
Okay.
But I would not add in a whole lot of extra things that they're not asking for.
Okay.
Okay, so why don't we go ahead with the one that is better written? Kate, if you could like zoom out this sample a little bit more. Oh, other way. Great, thank you. That's great. So this one revolves around an African American community outreach project for seniors. And this was around describing what a senior center has been doing for a community and serves 4 cities within a county region. And this pilot project was specifically focused on helping senior African American participants who are served by the center. So this center saw the demographic changes that were happening in the community and felt that they needed to address some healthcare issues specific to that community so that they could better serve their constituents. And they saw that their demographics and who they were serving was changing. So in the beginning here, we have Who Are You? The Blank Senior Center was established as a 501c3 in that year, 1994, who wanted to create a space or a place with activities and support services that would serve the specific needs of seniors. So state very clearly, first sentence. Then the center addresses the health, social, recreational, and logistical needs of the elderly population in 4 cities. So here you're getting more specific. What kinds of services, what kinds of needs? We are the largest senior center in Blank County, serve more than 450 older adults each day through a variety of programs. Our mission is to help seniors improve and maintain a healthy and independent lifestyle and to maximize their quality of life. So hopefully in the first paragraph, this is much more succinct and you don't have a lot of extra wording in here. You really don't have generalizations either. I think it's pretty clear what the center does and the kind of impact, who they're serving and the kind of impact they're trying to make. So then what do we propose to do in
Before
time?
you move on, can I make a comment?
Yep.
Okay, so some of the things that I like about this is that you're using natural language. You're not using like, big words or industry terms or whatever. You're also just keeping it extremely simple. You're not giving me your entire mission statement. You're basically just saying in one sentence what your mission is. Another thing that I love about this document is that it's broken up into clear sections. So I know when I read that first section, I'm going to leave that section knowing who you are. In all writing, but especially in this kind of thing, to put those short headers are great. You also have very short paragraphs. That's something I mentioned last time, is that you don't make this a chore for people to read. And everything you've done here with the shortness, all the visual things that you've done have made it really a pleasure to read. Like I will look at this and be like, oh, this is amazing, before I even start reading it.
Okay. So great perspective, Stephanie. So then by the next section, what you want to be getting into is what do you propose to do? We're conscious of the changing demographics in our center service area. We're committed to growing and adapting our center to meet the emerging needs. The Senior African American Community Outreach Pilot Program project will provide comprehensive access to health and social services to African American seniors in communities served by our center. Program objectives include, and I won't read through this whole paragraph, but a couple things to note. You're stating right up front program objectives in this section. Now, in this section, you can also include a little bit of narrative about COVID-19. And if this is happens to be a recurring project, how have you been impacted by COVID-19? So you can integrate a sentence or two around that. If this is a new project, you can also say, you know, we've been adjusting our services and our programs to meet the current needs, and this is how we've been impacted. But our intention is to launch this program in 2021. Something around that. And again, be very brief. All you need is 1 or 2 sentences about COVID-19 so that they know that you're managing. So in that second paragraph, we talk about type 2 diabetes. We want seniors, especially African American seniors, to achieve stabilized blood sugar levels for 3 consecutive months. And the number of people that we're going to be tracking, we want to see 75 seniors be able to achieve that. We are going to be increasing by 50% the number of African American seniors who access the services of our center for the first time within the grant period. Engaging a minimum of 50 African American seniors in our new healthy cooking classes, and etc. So again, at the end of this paragraph, you want to again reiterate within the grant period, here's your timeline. After the pilot phase of the program has been completed, which is year 1, we are committed to phasing in access to our center's other programs, years 2 and 3. And this you can explain further in your full proposal. So if you're going to segment it by year 1, year 2, year 3, you're asking for grant funds for year 1 to help get this launched. So don't worry about having to include too much in this section. Be very succinct with it. Any other questions around this part? Okay, so who will our program serve? The center plays a vital role in the lives of seniors. Again, you're reiterating that in blank, blank, blank cities, as evidenced by our 92% approval rating from our clients in 2007. These 4 cities account for 30.8% of the county's total senior population. Then, nearly 50% of our seniors are living below the federal poverty line. It is estimated that cumulatively, African American seniors make up an ever-growing segment of total senior population in our service area. So again, you're anchoring what you're saying in some data here. And you're also sharing that you're working with and really serving low-income African American seniors through your center and through this project. And that's who you're planning on serving. So you don't have to have a lot of data and a lot of information, but a couple bits of information can really help anchor what you're trying to do. Then the second part, and I know this goes into page 2 here, but when you take off, I wouldn't, doing an executive summary, I wouldn't have everything in boxes. you can have these segmented sections and say community need, what will you need to implement? You can have those headers if you want, to make it easy to read, but you don't have to have things in boxes. And so once you take off some of the formatting, this should come up to like 1 page, or maybe 1 page and a paragraph, which is probably fine. So community need in our 4-city service area has a rapidly growing older adult population, which has nearly doubled since 2000 and is expected to double again over the next 2 decades. We believe that this project will introduce our center and services to an extremely underserved senior population. So again, that flows from the above section, who you're serving and the need that is being seen and demanded in the community. As a result, we anticipate a rise in type 2 diabetes self-management, fewer African American seniors who have no medical home care, increased diversity among our clients to reflect the changing demographics of the cities we serve, and improved quality of life for those clients. So you're being very specific here. You're not making broad statements of that you're going to improve the quality of life for all African Americans in these cities or in this county, but for the clients that you're serving, you're anticipating that they are going to have an improved quality of life. And again, these things are what you're going to explain in your full proposal. So how exactly is this project going to be implemented? How are you going to increase the self-management capability of the seniors who are participating, and so on. So, and then finally, what will you need to implement? Here's your ask. The total cost is $200K. Of this amount, $140K has already been committed from county and city government and other funders. Now, if this is a new program for you and you don't have any other funding yet, then you're just gonna need to state that outright, that this is a new program. We are launching in 2021, and we are gonna be looking at other funders and applying for other grants. We're gonna be looking at other funding resources. And so tell them a bit about what your plans are for other funding that you're going to be looking for. Your investment of $35K will help secure the funding we need to launch this pilot project. And we are excited about the prospect of partnering with you. Thank you for your consideration of our request. So one other thing I want to mention about this area is you're not asking for the full $60,000 from this one funder that you need to come up to $200K. You're asking for a portion of it. So you're not putting the full expectation on this one funder. So be careful in, when you talk with a funder and you figure out, okay, would 20K be reasonable to ask at this time? Would 30K? Would 40K? Those are the kinds of conversations you want to have with a funder before you even apply. You can also take a look at, their 990 on GuideStar that I mentioned in the first session, and it will give you kind of an average of what they, how they fund other projects and the amounts. But don't worry, don't feel shy about picking up the phone and talking with them and say, we've got this project, we're really excited about it. We'd love to present it to you. We're looking for 60K. Would 30K from your foundation be a reasonable request at this time? And let them respond to that. So you don't want to put too much expectation on any one funder is basically what I'm suggesting. So any comments, questions, suggestions on any of this any of the parts in this executive summary.
Are you the author of this?
I am.
Just to clarify, the highlighted sections, that was just, I'm assuming that was just for our benefit, or would you have put that in the, what you submit?
I would not put the boxes in, and I, would not be highlighting any of the sentences. But if you like this format and you want to keep the sections, like proposed program and timeline, community need, you can certainly do that. And I think it does make it pretty readable. I don't know, what do you think, Stephanie?
Yeah, I like the section heads. And one of the ways that I do that when I'm writing is I think about the questions. What are the few questions that the funder is going to ask? Like, what do they want to know? And I sort of create it as an FAQ. Like, what will you need to implement? And then I write that answer, and then I change the question to a statement, needs for implementation. But by starting out with a question, it sharpens what you're saying to be around answering that specific question. So we have about 3 minutes left. Are there any other questions that people have? And Emily, are there any final thoughts you want to share?
Sure, just a few things about, how to approach funders right now. Like I said, it's extremely competitive right now. And but you still need to keep doing it. And because you're really establishing long-term relationships. So when you're writing, don't be afraid to say, this is how we've adjusted this year. And so if you have an after-school program and your kids have been meeting via Google Hangout for the last 4 months, talk about that in your proposal. And the participation rate, if you want to share that, and how kids have been doing via Google Hangout or Zoom or whatever it is. What's the feedback been? Do they like it? Are they struggling? Do you have some students who are, they really can't wait until they see each other in person again? But, this way we're keeping up with their learning in the meantime. So share those kinds of examples with funders. If you've got a video, feel free to let them know you'd love to share that video with them so they can kind of take a tour around your organization and see what's been going on in the past few months. Livy, I know you've got a great video of your cafe and things like that. I think, funders would love to see. And so that could be part of an email or phone conversation with the funder, that you'd like to be able to share that with them. Also, one of the things that I wanted to mention is try not to use the word COVID-19. COVID-19 is more of a scientific term and a medical term. Coronavirus, spelling it out, is much more relatable and gets a better response from funders, whether it's individuals or it's foundations. So try not to use, I guess I should say, use as few acronyms as possible when you're writing either an executive summary or proposal. You want to spell things out. The general wisdom for writing a grant is you want to really write at about the 8th grade level. And so that is why it's important to have another pair of eyes on it and make sure that you're writing really clearly. and you're not using a lot of jargon, and make it very relatable for people.
I noticed you wrote AA a few times.
Yep. Yep. And I did that on purpose because usually when you spell it out at the beginning of a proposal and you say African American, you can then abbreviate in the rest of the text. So otherwise it gets pretty labor intensive when you're always saying African American. So once you spell it out in the beginning, and even you could spell it out in the beginning and then after African American, you can put in parentheses AA. And then after that, the funder knows, oh, okay, every time I see AA, that's what that means. So you can do that for some acronyms that you might have in your organization. So that's another option.
That's good for synagogues that have long titles like mine. So you don't have to say Congregation Beth Israel Ner Tamid every single time.
I feel like all Jewish organizations in Milwaukee have that. Even
Yeah.
like JCC or MJF or FC or I don't know, MJDS.
So they'll associate, if you say Milwaukee Jewish Day School, parentheses, MJDS, from then on, they'll associate the acronym with the full name.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you for that example. That's a great example, like JCC.
Yes. So I want to respect everybody's time. So first I want to thank Emily so much for sharing your expertise with us. I learned a lot and I hope everybody else did too. And I want to thank each of the participants. Life is incredibly crazy right now, and the fact that you dedicated time to joining this workshop is it's a big commitment, and I appreciate it, and I hope that you've learned some things that made your investment of time worthwhile. If you have questions that haven't been answered, feel free to email me. I think you have my email address. Probably everybody does. It's stephaniew@milwaukeejewish.org. I'll put it in the chat. Actually, Kate, could you just put it in the chat, please? And really, I guess that's it. Thank you so much. And I wish each and every one of you the best of luck in pursuing your grants. I know that you'll have, I believe, more success based on what Emily shared with us in the last two sessions. Well, thank you, and Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you.
Bye.
Shabbat Shalom.